What if, at 75, your own daughter introduced you to the perfect man, charming, widowed, promising a second chance at love? I fell hard for Charles, said I do in weeks, and handed over my savings and home, believing in forever. But whispers of doubt turned to betrayal. He was a serial con artist with 7 aliases, draining widows like me. Worse, Elena was in on it, plotting for a cut of my ruin. Heartbroken, I faked my death with my pie aunt's help. Watch as this dead grandma orchestrates epic revenge, exposing them. Turning their greed into justice for scammed seniors. You won't believe the twist. Please comment and let us know from which city you're watching our channel. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Oh, hello there. If you're watching this, you're probably like me, someone who's seen a few chapters of life and thought the plot twists were all behind you. But let me tell you, at 75 years old, I learned the hard way that betrayal can sneak up on you like a shadow in the afternoon sun. Picture this. It's been 5 long years since my beloved husband Harold passed away from that sudden heart attack. We had a good life together. Nothing extravagant, mind you, but solid. A sweet little 2-story house in the suburbs of Seattle with a garden full of roses he planted for me. Some savings tucked away from his pension and a modest investment portfolio that kept things comfortable. No yachts or diamonds, just enough to live out my golden years without worry. But after he was gone, the house felt too big, the silence too loud. Loneliness. It creeps in like fog off the sound, wrapping around your heart until you can't breathe. I tried to fill the void. Joined a book club at the local library, mostly widows like me, sipping tea and gossiping about grandkids we didn't have. Took up painting classes, though my landscapes looked more like abstract smudges. And my daughter Elena, well, she was supposed to be my rock. She's 45 now, single after a messy divorce, always chasing some dream that never quite panned out. As a kid, she was a handful entitled, always wanting more than we could give. Harold and I poured everything into her. College tuition, that down payment on her first apartment. But gratitude, that seemed to evaporate with her 20s. She'd call once a month, usually when she needed money for emergencies, a car repair. Shopping spree, she called self-care. I'd send what I could, telling myself it was what mothers do. Deep down, though, I wondered if she'd ever see me as more than a bank account with legs. That's why her visit that crisp autumn afternoon caught me off guard. It was a Saturday, leaves turning gold outside my kitchen window. I was baking Harold's favorite apple pie just for the smell of it, you know? When the doorbell rang, there she was, Elena, all dressed up in a sleek black dress that screamed city girl, her hair perfectly coiffed. She hadn't visited in months, and suddenly she was hugging me like we'd been apart for years. "Mom, you look great," she said, her eyes sparkling a little too brightly. I eyed her suspiciously over my glasses. Elena didn't do surprise visits unless there was an agenda. We sat in the living room, sipping coffee, and she launched into her usual spiel about her latest job woes, something in marketing that wasn't panning out. But then, out of nowhere, she leaned forward with this conspiratorial grin. "Mom, I met someone, and I think he's perfect for you." My heart skipped. Me? Dating. At my age, I'd laughed off a few setups from friends, but Elena pushing this. It felt ... off. But she persisted. "His name's Charles. He's 70, widowed like you, runs his own consulting business." Charming guy, really? We met through a mutual friend at a networking event. I told him about you, how you're this amazing independent woman, and he lit up. Said he'd love to take you to dinner. I chuckled, waving her off. "Elena, honey, I'm flattered, but I'm too old for that nonsense." But she wouldn't let it go. Pulled out her phone and showed me his photo. Salt and pepper hair, kind blue eyes, a smile that crinkled the corners just right. He looked like the kind of man who'd open doors and remember anniversaries. Before I knew it, she'd set up a coffee date for the next day at that little cafe downtown. "Just try it, Mom. You deserve some happiness." The next morning, I fussed over my outfit, a simple floral blouse and slacks. Nothing fancy, and drove to the cafe with butterflies I hadn't felt since Harold proposed. Charles was already there, standing to greet me with a bouquet of daisies. Sylvia, he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, your daughter wasn't exaggerating. You're even more radiant in person. We talked for hours. He shared stories of his late wife, how they'd traveled the world before cancer took her, laughed about our shared love of old jazz records and mystery novels. He asked about Harold, listened intently as I reminisced, and by the end of the coffee, he had me hooked. Let's do this again, he said, walking me to my car. Dinner tomorrow. And just like that, the spark ignited. Over the next few weeks, Charles was a whirlwind. Flowers arrived at my door every Monday lily one week, orchids the next. He'd whisk me away to cozy Italian spots, where we'd share plates of pasta, and he'd hold my hand across the table, making me feel like a girl again. Elena was thrilled, calling almost daily to check in. See, Mom? I told you he'd be perfect. He's so into you. It was her most involved she'd been in years, helping pick out dresses for our dates, even suggesting we take a weekend getaway to the coast. I started to believe it. Maybe this was my second chance at love. At 75, who says you can't? Asterisk, but there were these tiny whispers of doubt, like cracks in fine china. Charles was evasive about his past Vagon, where he'd lived before moving to Seattle, quick to change the subject when I asked about his consulting work. And Elena's enthusiasm? It bordered on pushy. Don't overthink it, Mom. Just go with it. Life's too short. I'd catch her on the phone with him sometimes, their voices low and excited, and wonder what they were plotting. No, not plotting, planning. That's what I told myself. One evening, after a particularly romantic dinner where he surprised me with tickets to a jazz concert, Charles pulled me close under the stars in my backyard. The air smelled of roses, and his eyes locked onto mine. Sylvia, my dear, I've fallen hard. Let's not waste another moment. How about a whirlwind trip to the mountains? Just you and me escaping the world for a few days. My heart raced excitement. Yes, but a flicker of caution too. Was this moving too fast? Or was it just the thrill of new beginnings? Little did I know that trip would be the beginning of the end. Or, as I'd later call it, the spark that lit the fuse of revenge. That weekend trip to the coast was pure magic, or so it seemed. Charles booked us a quaint bed-and breakfast overlooking the crashing waves of the Pacific. We drove down in his shiny sedan, nothing flashy but well-kept like him. The whole way he played old jazz tunes on the radio, our hands intertwined over the gear shift. Tell me more about you, Sylvia, he'd say. Shh, drawing out stories from my teaching days, the trips Robert and I took to Europe in our younger years. In return, he'd opened up war at least. I thought he did about his consulting gigs in real estate, how he'd traveled the country, but always felt rootless after losing his wife, Margaret. She was my anchor. He sighed one evening as we watched the sunset from our balcony, a glass of wine in each hand. But now I think I've found my new harbor in you. I melted. It had been so long since anyone looked at me that way, not as a widow or a mom, but as a woman with fire left in her soul. We strolled the beach, collecting seashells like kids, and shared laughs over clam chowder at a seaside diner. Elena texted nonstop. How's it going, Mom? Isn't he amazing? You two are perfect. Her enthusiasm was infectious. For once, it felt like we were a team. By Sunday night, as we packed to head home, Charles pulled me into a deep embrace. This isn't just a fling, Sylvia. I want forever with you. My cheeks flushed. Forever. At our age, it sounded both foolish and fabulous. Back home, the pace didn't slow, accelerated. Charles was at my place almost every evening, helping with chores around the house. He'd fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen or weed the garden, all while whispering sweet nothings. You're blooming again, my dear, he'd say, tucking a flower behind my ear. Elena joined us for dinners, playing matchmaker with glee. Mom, you deserve this happiness. Dad would want it. Her words hit a soft spot. Robert had always hoped I'd find joy after him. Doubts, they were there, whispering in the back of my mind. Charles's stories shifted slightly sometimes. Like once he said he'd grown up in Chicago, another time it was Boston. And why did he always pay for everything in cash? But love, or what I thought was love, drowned them out. I was 75. Not dead I deserved this spark. 2 months in, on a crisp November day in the very park where we'd had our first real date, Charles got down on one knee. The leaves were turning golden red, crunching underfoot as joggers passed by. He'd packed a picnic cheese, crackers, and that Chardonnay again. "Sylvia Hargrove," he said, holding a simple gold ring that caught the sunlight, "will you make me the happiest man alive? Marry me and let's build the life we both deserve." Tears welled up as I said yes, slipping the ring on my finger. It felt right, like fate. Elena was the first to know. She squealed over the phone, insisting on planning everything. A small wedding, mum intimate, just family and close friends. You two lovebirds don't need fanfare. The wedding came together in a blur just 3 weeks later. We set our IDOS in the backyard of my home under a floral arch Elena and her kids had decorated. I wore a simple ivory dress that flowed like a cloud, and Charles looked dapper in a suit. Aunt Beatrice, my late husband's sister, was there sharp as a tack at 78, with her nonsense bob and piercing eyes. She was a retired private investigator, you see, with decades chasing down cheats and crooks for the police. Beatrice hugged me tightly but shot Charles a curious glance. "He seems eager," she murmured. I laughed it off. The ceremony was sweet. Vows exchanged, toasts raised, whiskers and mittens even wandered through like uninvited guests. Elena beamed as maid of honor, toasting 2 new beginnings. Honeymoon? A quick cruise to Alaska romantic Chile and full of stolen kisses on deck. But reality hit soon after we returned. Charles, ever the planner, sat me down one evening in our my living room. "Darling, we're married now. Let's make it official on paper too. Add me to your accounts, update the will. It's about protecting us both." His tone was gentle, but insistent. I hesitated. Robert's assets were mine alone, a safety net. But he assured me it was standard, a sign of trust. "I love you, Sylvia. This is our future." Elena chimed in during a visit. "Mom, it's smart. What if something happens?" So I did sign the forms at the bank, named him joint beneficiary. It felt like tying a knot, but a small voice inside wondered if it was too tight. Married life settled in, cozy at first. Charles moved in fully, his clothes mingling with mine in the closet. But subtle changes crept up. He'd suggest budget tweaks, eyeing my investment statements. Elena dropped by more often, always with a sob story about bills. Hinting at loans from the family pot, I started feeling like a resource, not a partner. And those odd phone calls, Charles stepping into the garage, voice low and urgent, hanging up if I approached. "Just business, love," he'd say with a smile that didn't reach his eyes then. At our first big family gathering, a holiday dinner with Elena, and the grandkids and Beatrice arrived fashionably late. She watched Charles like a hawk as he carved the turkey, her investigator instincts on high alert. "Sylvia, a word." She pulled me aside in the kitchen, her whisper sharp. "Something's off about your new hubby. Too smooth, too fast." My stomach twisted. Was it paranoia or the start of something real? Those first few weeks after the wedding felt like walking on eggshells disguised as clouds. Charles and I, now officially Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove. Well, he took my last name, or so he said, to honor our union, settled into a rhythm that seemed picture perfect at first. Mornings started with coffee on the porch, him reading the paper while I tended to whiskers and mittens. He'd kiss my forehead and say, "Good morning, my love." And for a moment, I believed the fairy tale. But honey, fairy tales have villains, and mine was creeping in through the back door. It started small with the money. Charles had this way of making financial talks sound romantic. One evening, as we balanced the checkbooks, something I'd always handled alone, he leaned over my shoulder. "It's cologne a bit too strong up close. Sylvia, darling, why keep everything separate? Let's consolidate our assets. It's practical, protects us both." His fingers traced the numbers on the page, lingering on my savings account balance. I shifted uncomfortably. Robert had left me a tidy sum, about $250,000 in investments. Plus the house worth another $400,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was security. "I don't know, Charles," I replied, forcing a smile. It's just ... Old habits, he chuckled. But there was an edge to it. Trust me, love. Marriage means sharing everything. By the end of the week, he'd convinced me to transfer more joint access, and I signed off telling myself it was love. Not control. Elena was around more than ever, which should have been a red flag waving in my face. She'd swing by unannounced, grandkids in tow, with tales of woe. Mom, the car's acting up again. Could you spot me a few hundred? Or the kids need new clothes for school. Things are tight. Charles would chime in supportively. Of course, Elena's family now. We'll help out. But it felt off, like they were tag teaming me. During one visit, as the kids played with the cats in the living room, Elena pulled me into the kitchen. Isn't Charles great? He's already talking about investing your savings wisely. You two are set for life. Her eyes gleamed a little too brightly. And she hugged me tight, but it was stiff, like she was acting a part. I started feeling used, like my home was turning into a bank branch. Still, I rationalized it. Families support each other, right? At 75, maybe I was just being paranoid, the lonely widow syndrome kicking in. But Aunt Beatrice? She wasn't one to ignore her gut. After that holiday dinner, where Charles had been all smiles and charm, pouring wine and telling jokes, Beatrice lingered in the kitchen as I washed dishes. The grandkids' laughter echoed from the other room, but her voice cut through like a knife. Sylvia, listen to me, she said, drying a plate with deliberate slowness. Beatrice was a force-retired PI after 30 years with the state police, specializing in fraud and missing persons. Her husband, my late brother-in-law, had passed years ago, but she'd kept her skills sharp. Volunteering with local cold cases? That man of yours. He's too good to be true. The way he rushed everything, I've seen it before in cons. Let me run a check on him. Discreetly, for your sake. I laughed it off at first, suds dripping from my hands. Beatrice, you're imagining things. Elena introduced us. She's family, but her eyes, steely gray and unyielding, bored into mine. Family or not, trust, but verify. I've got contacts, old databases, a few favors owed. Just say the word. I hesitated, glancing toward the dining room where Charles was entertaining the kids with magic tricks. Part of me wanted to believe in the magic. Another part, the teacher in me who spotted lies in her students' excuses, wondered. Okay, I whispered finally. But keep it quiet. I don't want to ruin things if it's nothing. That night, after everyone left, I couldn't sleep. Charles snored softly beside me, but I slipped out of bed and into my study, pulling out an old leather journal Robert had given me years ago. I started writing by flashlight. Yes, like a teenager with secrets, pouring out my fears. December 15th, married life is bliss, but why does it feel like I'm on a merry-go-round spinning too fast? Charles's stories don't always add up. Chicago or Boston. And Elena's sudden closeness. Is it real? Or am I the fool here? Beatrice thinks something's wrong. God, I hope she's wrong. The words stared back at me, a mirror to my growing paranoia. I hid the journal under a loose floorboard, my heart pounding. Was I betraying Charles by doubting him, or saving myself? Beatrice moved fast, true to her PI roots. Over the next 2 weeks, she called me during my errands code for when Charles was out golfing or whatever he claimed to do. Initial red flags, SIL. She reported in hushed tones from a coffee shop payphone, old school style. His background, fuzzy. Public records show gaps moved around a lot, short stints in different states. And get this, at least 2 quick marriages in his past, both ending in divorce after a year or so. One ex mentioned in a court filing about financial discrepancies. Nothing criminal yet, but it's a pattern. My stomach knotted as I gripped the phone in the grocery store aisle. Pattern, I echoed. Like what? She paused. Like targeting widows, rushing the romance, then, poof, assets gone. I hung up, hands shaking as I pushed my cart home. Charles greeted me with a kiss and helped unload groceries, oblivious. But that night, another secretive call from him in the garage, muffled voices, urgent tones. I pressed my ear to the door, but heard only fragments. ... Yes, it's on track, ... The old lady's hooked, ... double quotes, my blood ran cold. Was it business or something sinister? I confided more in my journal. January 2nd, paranoia or truth. Beatrice is digging deeper. I feel like a character in one of her detective novels. If Charles is trouble, what about Elena? She pushed this so hard. Help me, Robert, wherever you are. The doubts snowballed. Charles suggested we downsize the house, invest in his surefire opportunities. Elena hinted at bigger loans, her visits laced with subtle pressure. I played along, smiling through the unease, but inside, resolve hardened. I wasn't some naive Mark. I was Sylvia Hargrove survivor. Then, one frigid January night. As snow dusted the windows and Charles slept soundly, my phone buzzed. It was Beatrice, her voice a urgent whisper. Syl, you won't believe this. Charles isn't who he says. He's got 7 aliases and 3 living ex-wives, all cleaned out and left high and dry. Meet me tomorrow. This is bigger than we thought. My world tilted. Who was this man I'd married? And what role did my own daughter play? The next morning, after Beatrice's bombshell call, I drove to her place in a daze, the winter sun barely piercing the gray Oregon sky. My hands gripped the steering wheel like a lifeline, knuckles white. Beatrice lived in a no-frills bungalow on the edge of town, cluttered with filing cabinets and yellowed case files of PIs, paradise. She met me at the door with a steaming mug of black coffee and a hug that felt like armor. Sit, Syl, she said, her voice steady but her eyes fierce. I've been up all night piecing this together. You're Charles. He's not just shady, he's a professional predator. We settled at her kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens. Beatrice, with her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, laid it out like a detective briefing a suspect. Charles's real name, not even close. Under his Charles Whitaker alias, he'd been married 4 times before me. But digging deeper with her old contacts, retired cops, and database hackers revealed the full horror. 7 aliases over 20 years. Carl Winston in Texas, Chuck Riley in Florida, and more. Each time, the pattern was identical. Target a lonely elderly widow. Woo her with charm and shared tragedies. Rush into marriage, in control of finances, then vanish after draining the accounts. He's a serial con artist, Syl, Beatrice explained, sliding over photos of his ex-wives. These women, all in their 70s or 80s, just like you. Rushed weddings, joint accounts, then poofy ghosts. Leaving them broke and heartbroken, I stared at the faces worn but resilient women, much like my own, in the mirror. One, Evelyn from Arizona, had written a victim statement. He promised forever, but took my life savings in 6 months. Rushed the vows. Added himself to everything. Then claimed business troubles to liquidate it all. Another, Margaret from California, the same name he'd used for his late wife. Described how he'd isolated her from family before the big steal. My stomach churned. This wasn't romance, it was a script. How many? I whispered. Beatrice's jaw tightened. 3 living ex-wives we could track. The others, either past or too ashamed to speak. He's got a trail of bankruptcies and aliases, but he's slippery, no hard convictions yet. Moved states to dodge warrants. Tears blurred my vision as the pieces clicked. Those vague stories, the cash payments, the pressure on my assets, it all fit. But the rage, it simmered beneath the hurt. I married a monster, I said, voice breaking. Beatrice squeezed my hand. Not yet, hun. But we need to act fast. He's already eyeing your investments. She showed me bank logs, small transfers he'd started for our future. He'd said, I felt violated, like my trust had been pickpocketed in broad daylight. But nothing prepared me for the twist that gutted me worse than Charles's lies. As Beatrice cross-referenced timelines, she pulled up Elena's digital footprints, something I'd never thought to question. Your daughter, Beatrice said slowly, turning her laptop toward me. There, in a web of deleted but recoverable emails and texts from a shady server, was the proof. Elena had connected with Charles months before introducing us. Found him through a dark web forum for financial opportunities. Beatrice read aloud. One email from Elena. Charles, she's got the house. Savings perfect mark. Introduce as widower, rush the marriage. 30% cut for me after the split. My debts are killing me. She owes me for all those years. Another text chain. Mom's naive at 75. Play the charm. I'll push from my end. The room spun. My own flesh and blood. Flashing back, it all made sickening sense. Elena's childhood resentment blaming me for favoring Robert. Storming out at 18 for a life of poor choices, bad marriages, dead-end jobs, mounting debts. She'd always eyed my inheritance like it was stolen from her, popping in for handouts with that entitled glare. "You've got the easy life, Mom," she'd sneer, orchestrating this. For a cut of my ruin. Betrayal burned like acid. Why? I sobbed, clutching the table. Beatrice wrapped me in a blanket. Greeting grudge. Sil. She's in deeper accounts show wire transfers from one of his aliases already. As down payment, they plan to split your assets after he cleaned house. I confronted Elena that afternoon. Alone in my kitchen while Charles was out, she arrived with her usual breezy attitude. But I locked the door and shoved printouts in her face. "What is this, Elena? You set me up with a con man." Her eyes widened, then narrowed into denial. "Mom, you're delusional. Beatrice is filling your head with lies. Charles is good for you. I did this out of love." Gaslighting, pure and simple, she twisted it, accusing me of paranoia from old age. "You've always been dramatic. If anything, I'm the one suffering while you sit on Dad's money." Her words stung, but I saw the flicker of guilt, the sweat on her brow. She stormed out, slamming the door, yelling, "You'll regret this." Charles came home early, sensing the tension. He found me shaking in the living room, the papers scattered. "What's wrong, darling?" He cooed, but his eyes darted to the evidence. I accused him outright. "You're a fraud, aren't you? 7 names, 3 ex-wives ruined." He feigned shock, then turned cold, grabbing my arm not hard enough to bruise, but enough to isolate. "Sylvia, listen to me. This is all a misunderstanding. Elena's right. You're stressed. Let me handle the finances, you rest." He tried to usher me upstairs, phone in hand, probably calling for backup. The danger felt real, emotional chains tightening. I wrenched free, heart pounding. "Get out," I hissed. He left, but not before a chilling smile. "You'll come around. We both need this." Alone that night, heartbreak crashed over me like waves. Rage followed hot, unyielding. For the daughter I sacrificed for, the husband I trusted. No more victim. In my journal I scrawled, February 10th, betrayed by blood and bought love. But I won't break. Time to fight back. I called Beatrice at dawn. "Help me end this. Legally, cleverly. Make them pay without sinking to their level." Her voice crackled with excitement. "I've got an idea. Bold one. Fake your death, expose the web, and redirect everything. But it's risky. With Beatrice's help, I decided on the plan that would turn their scheme against them. Faking my death. It was insane but genius. Hold your breath for part 5, where the plotting begins and the deception takes shape. What would you do in my shoes? Forgive or fight? Comment below, subscribe, and join me next time. The revenge is plotting, and it's brilliant. After that dawn call to Beatrice, I barely slept a wink. Charles had slunk back to the house like nothing happened, acting the concerned spouse with flowers and apologies. "Darling, let's forget the nonsense. Elena says you're just tired, Elena." She'd texted me a half-hearted, "Sorry if I upset you, Mom," but I ignored it, my resolve stealing. I couldn't confront them head not yet. They'd deny, gaslight, maybe even turn the law against me with their web of lies. No, I needed something airtight, something that exposed them while protecting me. Faking my death sounded like a movie plot, but Beatrice, with her pie wizardry, made it re-land fictional for our tale here? Of course. All staged with props and pros to keep it YouTube-friendly and harm-free. We met that morning at Beatrice's bungalow, the air thick with coffee and determination. She had a whiteboard out, scribbling like we were cracking a Cold War code. "Okay, Sil," she said, capping a marker with a grin. "It's a plan. Simulate your death in a car accident, Loki, on a deserted back road. No real danger. We'll use a trusted friend as a body double and stage the scene with authorities in the know for the ruse. I blinked. Authorities. Isn't that risky? Beatrice nodded. My old partner at the sheriff's office owes me big. We'll file it as a drill or missing persons set up fictional elements for drama, but legally sound. Forged docs. I know a notary who does hypotheticals for cases like this. The goal? Make Charles and Elena think they've won, then spring the trap. The heart of the revenge was the will. While Charles thought he was beneficiary, we'd secretly update mine through Beatrice's lawyer contact a sharp woman named Ms. Patel, who specialized in elder fraud cases. Everything goes to the paws for Senior's cat rescue, I declared. Thinking of the shelter in town that helped abused elderly women with therapy cats. It was poetic turning their greed into good for women like those ex-wives and me. But the genius twist. The will named Charles as executor initially, transferring assets to his name temporarily. That binds him legally, Ms. Patel explained over a secure video call. He'll be responsible for any debts, taxes, or claims while the charity clause locks it away. If he tries to touch it, fraud charges stick like glue. We signed the new documents that afternoon, notarized and filed quietly. Charles's access. Revoked via emergency bank holds Beatrice pulled strings for. They'll see the old will first, she chuckled. And salivatin' till the real one drops like a bomb. Planting the seeds of deception was almost fun, in a dark way. I wrote a fake letter in my handwriting, confessing my final wishes to my dear Charles and Elena. I've left everything to you, both, house, savings, all. Use it wisely. I go knowing you're provided for. I left it in my desk drawer. It's obvious for them to find. Subtle clues too. I started mentioning health worries casually to Elena on the phone, coughing dramatically. Mom, you should see a doctor. She'd say, feigning concern. I could hear the greed in her voice. Charles, I played the doting wife, cooking his favorites while eavesdropping on his calls. Yes, soon. The old bat's signing over more, he'd whisper. Each word fueled my fire. Practicing the disappearance was the trickiest. Beatrice had a safe house, an upstairs apartment in her building, soundproofed from her pie days, stocked with canned goods and books. We rehearsed. I'd drive my old sedan to a quiet stretch of Route 47 at dusk, swerve off-road into a ditch padded for show, and vanish into the woods where Beatrice waited with a getaway car. My body double. Harriet, a 70-something actress friend from my community theater days same, Bill's silver wig, the works. Darling, I've faked more deaths than you've had hot dinners, she joked, trying on my coat. We tested it twice. Once, emergency flares and a dummy car for photos. The second time, I hid out overnight in the safe house, heart racing but exhilarated. No cats allowed. Yet Whiskers and Mittens went to a neighbor temporarily, but Beatrice smuggled in treats to keep my spirits up. Emotionally, it was a roller coaster. But oh, the empowerment. At 75, I felt like a secret agent, outsmarting these vultures with brains, not brawn. In the safe house, I journaled by candlelight. March 5th, hiding but not hiding my strength. They think me weak, an easy mark. Huh! This old gal's got moves. Robert would be proud resilient, like the oak we planted. Humor crept in too. Beatrice and I laughed over tea about Charles's toupee slipping in shock. Imagine his face when the charity cats get your fortune. She'd quip. But underneath, reflections hit hard. I'd trusted to Isley, let loneliness blind me. No more. This was my rebirth, reclaiming power for every senior scammed. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Wrapped in cleverness, the day came sooner than expected. A foggy Tuesday in early March. Charles and Elena were primed. Elena had called. Mom, let's talk inheritance soon. I kissed Charles goodbye that morning, suppressing a smirk. Off to the doctor. Love. Be safe. He waved absently, already plotting. I drove out, nerves buzzing like live wires. At the spot, Harriet took over parking the car, staging the crash with smoke bombs and a flipped mannequin. Beatrice whisked me away to the safe house, where we set up surveillance, a hidden camera in the house, fed via her tech setup, plus anonymous tips to cops about Charles's aliases. From our vantage, we watched the trap spring. News alerts buzzed. Elderly woman in car, accident feared dead. Charles got the call first. His feigned grief was Oscar-worthy, rushing to the scene in hysterics. Elena arrived soon after, tears streaming but eyes darting to the wreck. "Oh God, what about the will?" I heard her whisper to him. They hugged, but tension crackled, partners in crime, eyeing the prize. As sirens wailed in the distance, I leaned back, a grin spreading. The show had begun. Stay tuned for part 6, where the execution unfolds and the fallout hits them hard. What clue would you plant in their scheme? Tell me in the comments, like if you're rooting for me, and subscribe. The revenge is executing, and it's glorious. The accident went off without a hitch, smoother than a well-rehearsed play. That foggy Tuesday in March, I handed the keys to Harriet at the edge of Route 47. My heart thumping like a drum in a suspense thriller. "Break a leg, darling," I whispered, and she winked, driving off in my old sedan. Beatrice and I tailed her in her unmarked van, parking just out of sight. Harriet executed flawlessly. A controlled skid into a shallow ditch, pre-padded with airbags we'd installed, followed by smoke from a theatrical fog machine. And a mannequin slumped over the wheel. Dressed in my clothes, she bailed out the passenger side into the woods, where we scooped her up. By the time first responders arrived, tipped off anonymously by Beatrice's sheriff buddy as a possible emergency, the scene looked tragic. Skid marks, debris, and a body that forensics would confirm via planted dental records, all staged. Of course, pure fiction for our story. Word spread like wildfire. Local news hit by evening. 75-year-old local woman feared dead in single-car crash. I huddled in the safe house. Beatrice's laptop streaming feeds from hidden cams in the house, and even a drone Beatrice had borrowed from her Pi network. Charles got the call first. His phone lit up on screen as he lounged in my living room, feet up on the coffee table. "What? Sylvia? No." He bolted upright, face paling in exaggerated horror. Rushing to the scene, he arrived in his car, disheveled, wailing to the cops. "My wife. Oh God, not her." The cameras caught it all, tears that dried too quickly, glances at the wreck with a mix of feigned grief and calculation. Elena showed up minutes later, screeching to a halt, throwing herself into his arms. "Charles, is it true? Mom's gone." Her sobs were theatrical, but our audio picked up the aside. "What about the will? We need to move fast. Partners in crime, indeed, hugging for the cameras." But their eyes screamed jackpot. Back at the house that night, the real show started. With whiskers and mittens, safely with a neighbor, I'd reclaim them soon. They ransacked my study like vultures. Charles found the fake letter first. "To my dear Charles and Elena, ... double quotes." He read it aloud, a smug grin spreading. "She left it all to us. The house, the accounts, everything." Elena paced, phone in hand. I knew it. Mom finally saw reason. "Let's file probate tomorrow. I can push the paperwork." Greed oozed from every word. By morning, Charles was at the bank, flashing his widower ID, demanding access to joint accounts. "My wife passed. This is mine now." But oh, the hurdles Beatrice had planted. Emergency freezes from her lawyer contacts kicked in, pending verification of death, the teller said. Charles fumed, slamming the counter. "This is outrageous. I'm the executor." Surveillance showed him pacing, calling shady numbers. "Delay, the cops are dragging it." But once it's through, ... double quotes. Elena joined the fray, arriving with sympathy casseroles, but really to snoop. They huddled over my old will thought, one naming him beneficiary, plotting the split. 30% for me, as agreed, she insisted. Charles nodded, but tension simmered. "We'll liquidate the investments first, turn that $250,000 into cash, quick." Attempts to sell the house? Blocked by estate holds. Every move hit a wall, their frustration mounting. From the safe house, Beatrice and I watched, munching popcorn like it was a blockbuster. "Look at them squirm," she laughed. I felt a pang vindication, yes, but sorrow too. This was my daughter, my husband. Lost trust stung like salt in a wound. The subtle revenge elements we wove in were the cherries on top. While they schemed, Beatrice anonymously tipped off authorities about Charles's aliases using secure channels from her Pi days. By day 3, detectives knocked on the door. "Mr. Whitaker Hargrove, we have questions about your past identities." Fraud investigations from Texas and Florida. Charles blanched, stammering denials as Elena hovered, whispering, "What the hell?" Elena faced her own heat. Bank records linking her to suspicious wires from his accounts triggered IRS scrutiny. Conspiracy to defraud an estate? A Fed agent hinted in a routine call we monitored. Publicly. The media twist was delicious. Local news ran. Grieving husband donates widow's estate to charity. It stemmed from the initial will leak Beatrice's doing portraying. Charles, as a reluctant philanthropist, forced into trustee duties for the Pause for Seniors cat rescue, in honor of his late wife. Mr. Hargrove oversees funds for elderly women's cat therapy programs. Photos of him at the shelter, awkwardly petting kittens, went viral. Humiliation at its finest. He had to play the hero or risk exposure. All while the assets stayed locked out from my hidden perch, emotions swirled. Vindication warmed me like sunshine after rain, watching them unravel, knowing I'd turn their poison into purpose. The cat rescue. It would help women scammed like those ex-wives, providing therapy animals for emotional healing. Poetic, empowering. But sorrow lingered for the family I'd lost. In my journal, scribbled during stakeouts. March 8th, they dance on my grave, but the music's stopping. Elena, my girl, why? Charles, the illusion. Yet here I am, alive and plotting. Sorrow for what was. Joy for what's coming. At 75, this mix made me stronger, resilient, not resentful. As weeks ticked by, the cracks deepened. Charles and Elena met in secret, our cams catching the infighting. "You said it would be easy," she hissed. "Now cops are sniffing, your aliases are blowing it." He shot back, "Your texts are the problem. If you'd kept quiet, ... double quotes, fingers pointed, alliance fraying." Then the bombshell. At the probate hearing delayed, of course, the real will dropped. Judge read aloud. All assets to Pause for Seniors, with Charles Hargrove as executor responsible for all liabilities. Their faces. Priceless shock, then fury. "This can't be," she promised us. Elena wailed. Charles bolted from the room, yelling, "That old bat tricked us." Trapped, turning on each other, the trap sprung perfectly. But the final act, that was mine. Months passed in the safe house like a suspenseful intermission, but Beatrice and I kept busy. I dyed my hair a subtle auburn for disguise, read voraciously, and even took up online knitting classes, anything to pass the time while the legal gears ground. The cat rescue thrived on the estate funds, with Beatrice funneling preliminary donations to build buzz. Charles and Elena, tied up in knots. Legal battles dragged, probate delays, IRS audits, and fraud probes from Beatrice's tips kept them scrambling. Surveillance showed their alliance crumbling, screaming matches in the house. Elena accusing Charles of blowing the con, him retorting she'd snitched with her big mouth. Public shame mounted too. That viral philanthropist angle forced Charles into awkward shelter visits, where reporters snapped photos of him scooping litter. In memory of my beloved Sylvia, he'd mutter through gritted teeth. While Elena dodged calls from creditors her debts had attracted. They were trapped, assets frozen, reputations in tatters, all without me lifting a finger in anger. The climax came on a sunny May afternoon. 4 months after my death, the Pause for Seniors Cat Rescue held a grand unveiling event at the community center. Ribbon cutting for their new wing, funded by my estate. Elderly women with their therapy cats mingled, laughter filling the air. Beatrice had invited the press. local officials, and crucially Charles as executor and Elena as family. Representative, I watched from backstage. Heart pounding, dressed in a floral dress that hid my nerves. Ready, Sil? Beatrice whispered, handing me the mic. More than ever. The mayor spoke first, praising the generous widow's legacy, then introduced Charles. He stepped up, suit rumpled, looking haggard. Sylvia's gift. It's humbling, he droned, eyes on the crowd for sympathy. That's when I walked out. The room gasped as I took the stage, alive and beaming. Actually, Charles, I said, voice steady and amplified, it's not quite right. I'm Sylvia Hargrove, very much alive. Chaos erupted, shouts. Flashes from cameras, Elena fainting dramatically into a chair. Charles froze, face straining of color, mouth agape like a fish. You're dead. He stammered, staggering back. Elena bolted up, eyes wild. Mom, this is a joke. A sick joke. I held up a hand, calm as a summer breeze. No joke, dears. Unnecessary deception, thanks to Aunt Beatrice's evidence. She joined me, presenting folders to the stunned officials, printouts of aliases, emails, ex-wife testimonies, all corroborated by the sheriff's now official investigation. The confrontation was electric, but controlled, surrounded by supporters and law enforcement for safety. Charles lunged forward, not violently, but desperately. This is fraud. The Wu Yu tricked us. I met his gaze, unflinching. Tricked? You mean like your 7 aliases and 3 ruined ex-wives? Or Elena's emails plotting to split my assets for her debts? Elena sobbed. Mom, please, it was a mistake. I was desperate. But the evidence was ironclad. Recordings from our surveillance played on a screen, their greedy whispers echoing. The crowd murmured in outrage, especially the elderly women who'd been helped by the rescue. You preyed on the vulnerable, I said, voice rising with emotion. But now your scheme funds protection for them, therapy cats for abused seniors, safe havens. My house. Sold to support it. Savings. Locked in the charity. Irrecoverable for you, too. Authorities stepped in smoothly, clearing my name with a statement. Mrs. Hargrove's staged disappearance was a lawful ruse to expose fraud. Charles was arrested on site for multiple counts of wire fraud and identity theft, cuffs clicking as he protested. This can't be. Elena faced charges for conspiracy, hauled away in tears for questioning civil suits from the ex-wives loom too. No violence, just the law's long arm, backed by Beatrice's dossier. Public shame sealed it. Front-page headlines screamed. Widow's hoax exposes con couple with interviews from grateful rescue beneficiaries. Their lives. Ruined by exposure, debts piling as assets vanished into good causes, poetic justice for scamming women like me. In the aftermath, I rebuilt stronger than ever. The house sold. I moved to a cozy cottage near the cat rescue, whiskers and mittens purring at my feet. At 75, I started a support group for seniors, Silver Sentinels sharing tips on spotting scams. With Beatrice as guest speaker, Robert's spirit felt close. I'd visit his grave, whispering, "We won." Love. Empowerment washed over me, no more victim. Just a woman who'd reclaimed her power. Forgiveness. For myself, yes, I'd trusted too blindly, but learned from it. For them, time would tell, but justice was served, and you, my viewers. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your power, turning pain into purpose. What scheme would you unravel in your life? Drop it in the comments. Let's discuss. If this series moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more tales of triumph. Thanks for joining my journey. Until next time, stay savvy and strong. Sylvia, out.